today. All right.
All right. Welcome everyone to our session. Today we're welcoming our speaker, Mr. Selassie. He is a peace builder, social healer, freedom fighter, and lover of humanity. He's an associate professor of sociology and director of Center for Applied Social Issues at Sinclair Community College in Dayton, Ohio. Amaha is the co-founder and board chair of the Gem City Market, a community-driven effort to address food apartheid through a food co-op, and also co-founder of West Dayton Strong, an after-school summer program in DeSoto Bass Public Housing that is focused on math and reading development, utilizing a STEAM curriculum. So take it away.
All right. Well, thank you, Michelle.
Yeah.
Well, folks. Good morning to all of you. And our session this morning is not so structured, but really just sharing some experiences that we've had and experienced, and try to collectively look at all of our experiences. Okay. All right. Let me try to do what she just did. Okay. Okay. I did something wrong here. Okay. Okay. I didn't need to do that.
Okay.
Okay. Why did I do that? She passed it on, and now I got fumbled. Okay. Okay, there we go. We're back.
Ron, I thought I was the only one who could hit a wrong button like that.
Oh no. Believe me, we're in good company with that. Yeah. So this morning's discussion, as I was beginning to say, is going to talk about the intersectionality between race and cooperatives. And so it's a conversation that is emerging even more now in this ecosystem, particularly as we see more and more racial cooperatives coming into the space, particularly in the food space and other sectors of the space. So we're going to have that kind of conversation this morning. And Brother Selassie is going to talk about his experiences and learned lessons in developing a food co-op in Dayton, Ohio, and some of the challenges that they faced as they were organizing community and mobilizing the community. His Gem City food co-op has just opened in the last week. In the last week and a half, I think.
Week and a half. Yeah.
Week and a half. So folks, this is it. You know, you can unmute yourself because this is a conversation I think that I like to see us have at this sector of the academy. We have about 3 more sessions to go, and I know throughout the weeks that we've been engaging, we've had this conversation in many different forms already. So without that, let me just put a few thinking and talking points out there for you to think on. One is that, defining what I think is important is defining what is racial equitable community development. And I use that term because when you look at the resources that are out there and who's making decisions in terms of what activity is actually being inspired and incorporated in Black and Brown and other communities, it's how it's being led and what framework is being placed around it. So that we have to incorporate some definition in that, because as you move along this road of developing your cooperative, you are going to encounter institutional as well as structural policies that have been based around race. And so to know that going in certainly helps you develop a framework to which you are going to adapt and be able to utilize as you grow the work that you're doing in the communities that you're trying to serve. Secondly, being able to look at what's happening around this question of reparations. There's a big conversation that we're having locally as well as nationally. In cities like Asheville, North Carolina, Evanston, Illinois, and Providence, Rhode Island, local governments have now adapted reparation plans to address some of the inequalities or inequities that have occurred in their cities. And so we're going to, talk a little bit about those initiatives and how those initiatives are moving along the road. And then, racially, I think we can't talk more enough about this question around wealth building, because no matter how affordable that we want to and accessible our goals are in terms of building our cooperatives, particularly around service industry or either other products, it's contingent on what our constituents who we're serving are able to afford. And so a part of our work certainly has to be able to address this racial wealth divide that's happening in our communities all over. And so I'll frame some statistics out there in terms of Black spending power. That's important, as well as the institutional partners that we can look at engaging in our work. Over the last year since George Floyd's murder, there's been a reimagining of equity in Black and brown communities. And a lot of this reimagining what equity looks like is that cities have now adopted to creating positions around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And if they're not devise those kind of positions within local government, they really have now moved towards empowering racial equity, or excuse me, not the racial, but equity officers in cities. So I'm gonna bring in our speaker this morning, Brother Selassie, and maybe it's be like a question and an answer, and we'll add some input. But you've been in this space for a while now, doing this work, and what have you seen racially in terms of transformational work that has gone on in the co-op ecosystem?
Yeah, and I'm hoping, we can have a dialogue. I want to, I love getting everybody's voice in the room. I believe in collective intelligence more than anything else, right? Because we are the ones we've been waiting for. I think before I go that, I think something that you said that really struck me that I wanted to touch upon, especially when it goes to what happened after the tragic murder of George Floyd last year, is I think like structural racism became more of an issue, right? That people are talking about, beginning to acknowledge, some cities are wrestling with. And I bring that up because naming racism as a public health issue became more of a thing that's been happening around the country. And even recently, the CDC just announced racism as a public health issue. And the reason why I think that's important is because that opens up the space for a whole next type of conversation, right? Because it basically implies that, like, not only is race structural, but that race has the notion of race has a tangible, quantifiable impact on the human body, right? They call it the weathering effect, or some people call it allostatic load, how a body of a 40-year-old Black woman is like weathered to be like a 50-year-old because of the stress and all these things, right? And so how all of this connects to co-ops for me is how we frame co-op development, right? Because and to me, a lot of it comes down to redlining, right? So redlining was a structural policy that said that we're going to divide up how we distribute resources by race, right? And that, like, areas that were Black were deemed worthy for underdevelopment and disinvestment, and that was categorically across the country, right? And so now those red line areas are areas that have low access to opportunity today. You know, like Du Bois, he said that problem of 21st century is problem of the color line. And now we understand that that color line has translated into an opportunity line. You know, opportunity meaning conditions favorable for the attainment of a goal. You know what I mean? If we're looking at housing, jobs, connectivity, access to parks, food, you know, food apartheid, et cetera, you know. And so I use that as a framework because how that connects to public health is understanding like health is broader than just, you know, diabetes and asthma, which we suffer more due to the lived environments that we have. But it's looking at like how co-ops can combat the health issues that are in our community by working together, pooling our resources together in different ways, you know, like opening food co-ops, you know what I mean, opening different co-ops to meet our needs. But from a funding issue, from a funding lens, I think when we frame it as health, you know what I mean, we have a strong case, you know what I mean, because, you know, it was an imagined attack or structural violence against the African American community, you know, that has never been rectified, you know what I mean. So yeah. So what's your question? I kind of throw that in because you had me thinking. But.
Well, you know, I was asking you regarding the reimagining of race in terms of just today's environment, in terms of just practices. But you hadn't shown something that really is important, and something I moderated a panel yesterday around affordable housing, and when you look at, you know, the early 1900s, particularly around the period between probably 1913 onward to probably 1940, you saw the institutional implementation of zoning practices that really dictated even to today where Black communities and other communities of color would be located in certain cities. And those practices from local government really has driven walls around economic development in Black and brown communities.
Yeah.
Every city had a racial zoning map. Every city, a racial zoning map that was supported and prompted by local government, state government, federal government, and even the federal judicial system covered that said where you could buy, where you couldn't buy, and who could actually sell property to you based on your color.
That's right.
Yeah. So today we're still living in the wake of some of those policies. I like to reference Reverend Barber in North Carolina, who's leading the new Poor People's Campaign, where he's talking about we're into Jim Crow 0.20.
Yeah, 2.0. Yeah.
Right. That's right. Jim Crow, and so we're seeing that a lot of those practices are certainly dictating the landscape of the work that we're doing, particularly when we talk about trying to develop new models,
right,
or reintroduce old models, because co-ops are not a new model in the Black community. It's an old model that sort of got underutilized during a period of time, and now we're elevating that model back up again.
Right.
Because it deals socially and economically with where we are as people in our cultural community.
Yeah, and I think that is like an important foundational piece. You know what I mean? Sometimes when people go up, oh, some kind of something like that, right? And so it's like knowing that like to me, co-ops are emerging in Black communities out of survival. You know, it's that like we realize we got to pull our resources together. We realize we got to pull together, and that's been historically how we've done things. You know what I mean? So it's really returning to our original strategies. You know what I mean? Like even from things as mutual health insurance and all these things. You know what I mean? Like we've always had to pull together to make it happen. Before it was out of a forced necessity. And now I would argue it's still a necessity, but there's an illusion that it's not a necessity, and that's what keeps us in the state that we're in right now, you know. And so it's like, how do we you know, go back to me in this hour, it's about redefining Blackness for ourselves. And what I mean by that is that like we've been operating off of a wide imagination of what Black is, right? And then allowing that to frame or shape or put limits on what Black is, instead of allowing ourselves to determine for ourselves what that is. You know what I mean? And the multiple layers, multiple expressions of it. You know, and the root of that is interdependence versus independence, because you know, we've been brought in this thing of like rugged individualism and all of these things, right? But the pandemic has shown us that like we're actually a social body. You know, they're like what affects one affects the other, or what King calls a single garment of destiny. You know what I mean? But the African philosophy is Ubuntu, right? I am because we are. You know what I mean? That my humanity is realized in the presence of other humanity. You know, so when I'm talking about redefining Blackness, I'm really talking about redefining humanity itself, right? Because like it removes the hierarchy that says one group of people is inherently superior to other human beings. You know what I mean? And that shift to interdependence then, you know, leads to cooperation, leads to love, leads to grace, leads to forgiveness, right? Because we realize that we are the ones we've been waiting for, or asset-based community development, right? How are we utilizing the gifts and talents of our community, the latent gifts and talents that are not put into play fully because of our lack of relationship, right? Our lack of healing, historical wounds, be it in the Black community or be it across the entire community, right? That's keeping us from our full capacity, our full potential. You know what I mean? So it's a shift, you know what I mean? It seems like a subtle shift, but it has wide ramifications, right? And that's why I think it's being fought against, you know, so hard.
So Brother Selassie, share with us some of the learned lessons that you and your organization has undergone as you developed this food cooperative in Dayton, Ohio, and what that has done or looked like over the, because I met you back in 2017, and you were in Ohio, and you were organizing,
right?
And so you went through almost 4 years or 3 years of just pure organizing, building the community to take ownership of this asset. And so talk to us about what that meant racially in Ohio, particularly your community of Dayton, and how you work to get the community to coalesce around this idea of ownership of a community grocery store.
Sure, you know, and I'll start from the present, and then I'll go to the back. You know what I mean? Because you know, we opened a week and a half ago, and one of the things that you know, it's learning how to have shared ownership. You know what I mean? Because like it's a foreign concept, you know, and so like even now we have the market, but the question is, okay, so how do we activate it? How do we occupy it? How do we own it? Like just when I was teasing you earlier about Russia, you know, like I was like, I need to run to the store and get me some tea or something to wake up. And so while I was in there, this woman came up to me and she was like, "Are you the one that helped open up the grocery store?" And I was like, yeah, you know, we did this thing together. And then she mentioned how excited she was, and she signed up for yoga class next Wednesday, and that she has a you know, she's starting to grow fruits and vegetables, and she wants to get organic certified so that she could you know, sell to the market. I was like, oh, that's great, because at the market we have 3 types of local. One type is West Dayton local, which is Black local basically, and so so we can designate it so that people will know that when they're buying your products, they're supporting a Black business. But I bring all that up because at the end I was like, you know, like this is our market. So if you have ideas, if you want to do a class, whatever, let us know, right? Because like we're going to shape the destiny of this market together, because it's about how to build our shared future. So I'm saying that we're learning how to actually do it in practice. You know what I mean? Because we're not used to being like, you know, having a shared ownership, a collective, you know, collaborative leadership model. You know what I mean? A leaderful, you know, community is what we're trying to do, and situate the market as like a hub or a beehive that people are coming in and out. You know what I mean? Building these deeper connections. You know, but like from the beginning, I think so to give a little history, in Dayton we're hyper segregated. We're one of the I think it's like 9th most segregated city in America. So we have 98% of all African Americans live on the west side of the river. 94% all white live on the east side of the river. Then you have on the east side also the Turkish community. Oh, for real? Turkish community, Latino community, and African refugees, right? And so what kind of started this journey, like we were talking about, like there was 40,000 residents in Dayton and no, in West Dayton, and no full service grocery store, you know? So it was a food swamp, or what we like to call food apartheid, because we want to acknowledge the structural mechanisms that are at play and that how they imagined it, you know what I mean? So that we can reimagine it, you know what I mean? The power comes in knowing that's human agency that did this, and then that gives us hope that we can change it, right? And the hope gives us the power, you know what I mean? Knowing that we can actually transform our lived environment, which has been this process through this whole journey, right? And so these maps came out called opportunity maps that showed that like opportunity in Dayton was distributed by the river, that like the West Dayton had low and very low opportunity in all categories, right? And so, you know, as a sociologist, you know, I immediately connected that to redlining. And so we had a community meeting to talk about it. And there'd already been some talk about opening up a grocery store, and we continued the conversation there. And then after that, you know, we kept meeting, you know, and eventually became the Gem City Market. I think some of the things that were key was we organized in a participatory way. So I'm a community-based participatory researcher. So that's about like how you take academia out of the ivory tower and put it in the community, acknowledging that like Ella Baker said, that the people most impacted by the issue understand the issue better than anybody else, right? So how do we walk with the community? How do we leverage the gifts, talents, and knowledge of the community towards shaping what it is you want to work for, what is the environment we want to work, live, and play in, et cetera, et cetera. So we walked with the community through the whole process, and from naming the market, from sending out a survey to ask people if they wanted a grocery store. You know what I mean? Like if this is not something that we don't want, then you know, we're not going to do it. You know what I mean? But it came back. We did it it was about a month and a half, and we got about 1,000 responses, 1,500, something like that. All resoundingly saying that they wanted the market and that they would shop there if we opened up one. So that was kind of our initial catalyst, you know. But we did something. I'm gonna share knowledge that I'm kind of learning, and like we're all learning from each other, and I want to put that out there. Like, you know, like we learned so much from Renaissance, you know what I mean, and from different co-ops that have come before and paved the way, and we're standing on the shoulder of our elders and ancestors, and we add in another brick, you know what I mean, and you know, people come after us and add, and you know, on what we land. So I'm gonna put that out there. So normally when people start co-ops, you know, like they'll have the idea, they'll have the commitment that they want to do it, and then immediately they start selling shares, right? We went a different route. Once we understood that the community wanted it, or you know, were kind of favorable to the idea, you know, I mean, a lot of people didn't believe us either. I need to put that out there, you know what I mean? Like, y'all gonna steal the money, all these things, right? Because in an area that's been disinvested for so long, you know what I mean, it's been overpromised and underperformed. You know what I mean? And so like that is part of what we're dealing with, you know what I mean? Like the internalized oppression, all these things, you know what I mean, through this process that we tried to heal, because we said from the get-go, getting the grocery store was not enough if we did not change the dynamics of how things happen in our city, right? Like I started going in rooms with funders that I didn't even know existed, you know what I mean? But it shouldn't just be me, right? Like how are we creating these avenues so that more people are in these circles and this, that, and the other. So changing how power flows in the city was part of our underlying thing, you know. And so once we knew that we were going to do it, we spent about 1.5 years, 2 years underground, just organizing, like learning what a co-op was, because you know, and what a grocery store was, and how to run one, because you know, we had shopped, but we had zero grocery store experience amongst us. Later on, we picked up somebody whose family owned some grocery stores, and he became on our board, you know what I mean? But in the beginning, we didn't have that. And so, you know, we went to FCI, we went to different experts, you know, CoopNomics and different ones, you know what I mean? We connected with Ron, you know, and we worked with Co-op Sensi, and we learned, and during that time, people probably thought we quit or whatever, but then 2 years later, we came out, you know what I mean, and then started selling shares, this, that, and the other. And I'm saying that's important because we didn't sell shares until we had a business plan. We had a feasible case that like this could actually happen, you know what I mean, before we started selling shares. And I think sometimes when we jump to sell shares right away or whatever, you know, you lose momentum and you can get discouraged along the way, especially as Ron was pointing out when we were talking earlier, if you don't have a full-time organizer, you know what I mean? So it dissipates the energy, you know what I mean?
Question.
So we kind of waited.
I had a question.
Yeah,
Hello?
sure. I'm sorry. I
Sorry
talked too
about
much.
that. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. I didn't know to jump in. Question, because I mean, you know, I'm an entrepreneur kind of coming into community space, even though I've, you know, been a part of the outcomes of it for a minute. But in terms of trying to move that work forward, relatively new to it. I hear the word organizing a lot, and I'm trying to understand what is the system of organizing outside of just relationship building. Is it because I hear like the position of, you know, lead organizer. Is that more of just a facilitator and manager of the process of building relationships and, you know, right people, right seat and moving it forward, or is it like what like what is the steps to organize, particularly when you
Yeah.
put this co-op together?
Okay, yeah, perfect. Yeah, good question, right? So for us, we said that it's more than a market, but it's a movement, right? So we never saw the market as being our end goal, but being like a step toward broader community transformation. You know what I mean? And I'm saying that to say that, like, so to me, organizing has two different facets. One is, you know, like if you're having to raise funds, like who's the one that is like, you know, knocking on the doors at fundraisers, and, you know, philanthropists, and, you know, keeping the operational part of like how to open a grocery store open. But the other part to it, right, which is why if you don't have somebody full-time or part-time, it's about possible. It's actually engaging the community. So, you know, we are highly emergent, and we have a high level of decentralization. And so it's like, so I think part of it is building deeper trust, right? Because movements move at the speed of trust, right? So how are we building the deeper relationships that can enable community transformation? I think it's listening, you know, and participation is key. Like, and that's why decentralization is so important. It was like, you know, if people wanted to create a cornhole group and call it Gym City Market, we're like, hey, go for it. You know what I mean? Like we didn't have like thousands of like hoops you got to jump through. You know what I mean? And like, cause we wanted the community to have this sense of ownership early. Like, yeah, this is our market. You know what I mean? Like, we're gonna do this thing together, right? Because really part of organizing job, I think, is like how we build that shared future. You know what I mean? Because we have a shared future regardless, right? Because it's a sin garment of destiny, right? But how do we turn our hearts towards each other, that we realize that like our community future is going to be determined by like how we work together as a community, you know? And so I think it's being highly participatory, you know, building the ecosystem, you know, connecting the dots, and also driving the rock forward as far as like, you know, the millimeter steps that you got to do to continue to birth it, because it's a both and. So you're building the base, right? Then at the same time you're moving the thing forward, and they can you know, they can work together. Did that help at all, or?
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, in a lot of ways, that's how we bring the work together. And and I guess for me, as this personal, something I need to work on is just the patience that comes with, particularly like a democratically ran, self-organizing organization that's actually doing the work as they shape and develop the work, stepping into the unknown. And I mean, a lot of the moving parts that you mentioned are what are what is going on in our organization. But I mean, I guess it's you really can't necessarily like it's the approach to organizing is different in every community in a sense, but I hear a lot of commonality in most of it. So it's less about kind of a structured approach and more, like you said, building the ecosystem out, which just takes time and patience. So I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the patience part is so critical, right? It's slower, you know what I mean? But I'll tell you the tail end,
Yeah, it's
right?
definitely slow.
Like it's slower, and you lose people. Like I was always taught in organizing, you know what I mean? Like you have a core group that's gonna move the rock forward. Other people are gonna come and go. They're gonna get balance. They're gonna float in. They're gonna float out. You receive it all. You're gracious when they come. You're gracious when they leave. You're gracious when they come back. You know what I mean? Like you have that open thing as people can flow as their time and life permits. You know what I mean? But
Yeah,
you have that core group that in season, out of season is gonna move the rock
and
forward.
that was a learning curve for me, and I'll shut up because they know I can talk. But that was a learning curve for me is when you are doing community, community involvement is understanding to move the ball forward. Like everybody has input, but not necessarily everybody has decision making. And so how do you balance that when you're claiming a democratic way to move the work forward, but there's only like you said, there's only a few core people that are actually moving the ball forward. Does that make
Mm.
sense?
Yeah. I would say major decisions, getting input, so and bringing it back to the community. So like we had the community named the market the Gem City Market because like we're known as the Gem City. Dayton is we're home of the funk too, you know what I mean? But also the Gem City Market. So there was different names, you know what I mean? We had some like fresh time type of name. We had all these different names, right? And so we put all the names on this wall and we went through them. We kind of pieced up together. Then we put back out to the community. Okay, this is what we heard from you. You know what I mean? And then they voted. And so it's a slow process, right? Architectural design. We had an architect out in the community for like months, going to meetings, hosting events at the library, getting people's input. I'll never forget. I tell the story often at the market because there are these bathrooms that are at the end of the market, but at the beginning they were initially at the front entrance, right? And then someone came in. So our market has a teaching kitchen, a health clinic, and a community space inside the market. And I was at this meeting and an elder came and she was like, so you mean if I have to get a urine sample, I gotta take my urine sample and walk it across the produce to get to the health clinic? We're like, oh, didn't think of that. You know what I mean? So we moved the bathrooms to next to the health clinic. You know what I mean? So that was community input. And I say that's so important because what you want to establish is not it's the process that matters, right? Because like on the tail end, now the community can see their fingerprint on the market. They can see the meetings where these decisions were being made, right? And all these things, it gives more hope because it's how we realize our agency. So like now, it's not that, like some people come and say, oh, great job doing the market. No, we did this together. You know what I mean? Like that's literal. That's not just a cool saying or whatever. Like we literally did this together as a community and we doing it, you know what I mean, right now, you know what I mean? And so like that sense of hope, like it is generated, like it creates something in the atmosphere, you know what I mean? So like to me as an organizer, one of our main things is how do we keep elevating hope, you know what I mean? Like how do we keep building power, right? And the market is a tool to do that, right? Like food is one of the easiest ways to organize a community. You know what I mean? But it's like how do we change the conditions and the atmosphere that we're organizing in, that we're living in, that we have this sense of expectation, this sense that I can do other things beyond just the market. You know what I mean? Like, and that's how we activate the gifts and talents in the community. Because the more we have hope, the more we're willing to give our gift to it. You know what I mean? Because we realize the moment we're in. You know what I mean? And so it's like, oh, I'm willing to do more. You know what I mean? And not just with the market. I mean, I mean, we even have a community land trust. I mean, we have a lot of other things that we're doing too. But even just seeing other stuff happening in the community, you know what I mean? That's amazing. That's coming off of just the hope that's in the air right now. You know, so it's a slower process, but it's when you get it up the hill to a certain point, it's like like the African proverb, you know what I mean? If you want to go far, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. You know what I mean? And like that's the way to do it, because when we're hierarchical in our approach, you know what I mean? Someone moves, someone dies, whatever, then the whole thing crumbles. You know what I mean? And so, like, by being decentralized, leaderful, we're highly participant democracy. You know what I mean? That the end result is that you have more leaders, and you have a shared we, right? Which is part of the goal, I think, of building community.
Mm.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna jump in 1 second, if I may. Excuse me. I'm
Go ahead,
from
Amigo.
West Dayton. Lived in the Soda Bass, so I'm very familiar with. I was just home last week, so I saw y'all on Salem and Superior.
Yeah, exactly. Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
so I saw when I was home. So I mean, I'm familiar with it because when they closed the Kroger on Gettysburg, there was really nowhere for families. My family lives on Fairport, so there's nowhere really to go outside of the one on Seaman. There was a literal food desert because there's nowhere for people to go to get fresh food, fresh vegetables anywhere in that community. So the fact that you moving the needle, one, it's a beautiful space, and I saw it's absolutely gorgeous. And I'm buying memberships for my parents because they're still older in their ways, not seeing it. But I'm gonna force them to carry themselves down there to go in there. But I just want to commend the work you guys are doing because I was home and I saw it for myself.
Wow, good thanks, man. I
Yeah.
really appreciate it. Cause yeah, I used to live, right by the Wesley Center, right? So I was right down the street
Oh
from the
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
closed, you know what I mean? And that was such a devastating blow, you know what
Hmm.
I mean, to the community. And I think part of it is realizing that, like, Kroger's could dip at any moment. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
look what they did in California. Like they had the heroes ways. Like, well, we're going to close grocery stores. You know what I mean? And so it's part of connecting to the community that like once we own it, then like that's part. The self-determination is that like we can control the destiny of it, right? That we
Right.
control our access to fresh fruits and vegetables. And LaRon, correct me if I'm wrong,
Go ahead.
but I started pondering this. I literally think it's the first time we've ever sold mangoes in that region.
No, you gotta go over there by I guess by UD or somewhere to get something like that. You don't have anything in that area to get any mangoes. At your best, you might find a kiwi two for $1 if you're lucky. But no, we don't have access to stuff over there. No.
Yeah, no, it's real. You know what I mean? And so it's like things that like can be taken for granted or seem as like whatever, but it's like it wasn't there. And the other
Right.
part of it, so like there was this Frontline documentary done on Dayton about like 2 years ago, and I watched it, and then I came to school the next day, where I work at, and I drove through the city with the lens of the documentary, and I was like, damn, we've accepted a lot of things that are really
Hmm.
unacceptable, but we
Mm.
so used to it that we just can claim it as the norm. You know what I mean? And
Right.
so like part of the market is challenging the dominant narrative. You know what I mean? About like who is worthy of development, who is worthy to have access to fresh fruits and vegetables. You know what I mean? And it's challenging what we accept, right? As being normal, you know what I mean? And demanding more of ourselves and more from everybody else. Because ultimately, I mean, we got broad range of help. You know what I mean? We got help, city, county, federal, philanthropy, all of that. You know what I mean? But ultimately, like we are the ones we've been waiting for.
Hmm.
Like our self-determination is critical in defining for ourselves the area that we want to work, live, and play in, and leveraging our resources to make it happen. That's a whole notion of collective hope, right? Like how we build that shared vision of the community that we want to inherit. You know what I mean? We want our children to inherit.
I think that's one of the major problems that we have. The fact that the health disparities around food, etc., has become normal.
Yeah.
And the major problem is to change the mindset like, that's crazy. Why shouldn't we have this? Why do we have to go 10 miles to go to the giant Why can't we have a community grocery store? Why can't we have fresh fruit and vegetables? And getting back to the thing with the mangoes, how do you eat a mango? Okay. What is a kiwi?
Mm,
That's because it's been so normal that you don't eat those kind of fruits and vegetables. How do you know when a pineapple is ripe?
man.
Little things. I mean, for people who know, and even for me, I won't say I'm people who know, but I was brought up with other races of people. So it taught me how to find out when a mango was ripe and how to eat it and how to cook it and what do you do with an eggplant?
Right.
Those
Right.
kind of questions for people in our community are so daunting, and nobody wants to say, well, I don't know how to do that.
Hmm.
And that's
Amen.
one of the
Amen.
biggest problems that we have is getting past that mindset. Because
Yeah.
when we're thinking about co-op, we have to get through all the same things, of sure, that you did. And you said it took, what, how many years?
6 years altogether.
So
Yeah,
we're
5.
just starting.
Yeah.
So we've got a ways to go. And I thank you for all that you're saying.
Amen. You know what? And yeah, and I appreciate what you said too. And we make the road by walking it, and to me it's more about the process, like getting the birthing the grocery store. It's a great moment. What I mean? I'm super thankful. What I mean? But it's just a milestone. It's not the end. What I mean? Like, the thing is, now we have a community that is engaged. We got close to 5,000 members right now. What I mean? So like we have a community that is engaged and ready to do more. And that's the whole thing, right? Because like once you get a community that's woke up, what I mean? It's like how we keep building. What I mean? We got community land trusts now. What I mean? Because we feel co-ops are the best way to fight against gentrification, right? So it's like how are we expanding it out? But back to what you're saying. When you're looking at the opportunity maps, which I promise you, every area that Ron mentioned, how every city had a redlining map. Every city has disparity in opportunity based upon the redlining map, right? You're 3 times, if you're African American, you're 3 times more likely to live in a food desert and a food swamp simultaneously, and all these things, right? But when you're looking at it, you're looking at risk, right? And what I mean by risk is that, like, and Laurent can attest to this, right? So in Dayton, what I mean, when it comes to water treatment plants, the trash, all the things that everybody in the county needs, where is the area that's been designated worthy to receive all of these things that nobody wants in the community, but everybody needs to survive? And it's West Dayton, right? And so that exposes us to asthma, right? And all these other things that come as a result of having the things that we as society say that we need, what I mean, but nobody wants in their neighborhood. What I mean? And so, like, and that creates what's called sacrificial zones, right? Where you put the things that are undesirable in a certain community. What I mean? And so, like, that's why I'm saying the health case is so important when you're building your co-ops, right? Because it's collecting this data that can show like how these structural mechanisms are impacting the health of the community, right? And what are the steps to being done to mitigate that? What I mean? And I'm not saying that the market is the end of the food desert or anything like that. It is for a part of the geography, but like the food desert is deep. Like now Trotwood, which is like the next region up, is looking to do one. Jefferson is looking to do one, because the food desert is a big area, or the food apartheid is a big area in our region. So I mean, we're creating an oasis in part of it. What I mean? But like, or emerging oasis, but like, it needs to go deeper. But building that health case is critical. And as you mentioned, I keep coming back to redefining blackness, right? Because like Karji Woodson talked about, we've been so trained to go to the back door, they don't even got to tell us no more that we automatically just go to the back door. You know what I mean? And so like, how are we switching that mind state? What I mean? Of how we see ourselves, how we see each other, right? Like how we walk with humanity, like all these things. I think we got to reimagine in this hour. What I mean? Because I think like the notion of whiteness is being challenged on multiple levels, and the underlying assumptions, you know, patriarchy comes from it. Like all these things I think are being challenged right now. You know what I mean? Like how do we get to the inherent dignity and worth of every human being, right? And build our structures around that, you know, rooted in love. You know what I mean? Like how are we reimagining for real, you know, our lived environment and creating alternative spaces. So like in Dayton, we're building an anti-racism ecosystem, right? And we're housing that inside the market, meaning that like we have an ecosystem, but now we have geography where people that are also anti-racist can get their groceries and connect to one another and build these relationships, right? You know what I mean? So like that's what I'm talking about the beehive. You know what I mean? Like how are we building the infrastructure of an alternative space in the city and really transforming the city, right? And having geography to do it, like that third space. You know, you have your home, your work, but where do you go in community where you're building community? You know, and so it's been beautiful to see people come into the market and like, you know, running into each other. You know what I mean? Like everybody keep talking about, wow, this is really a community market, man, because everybody's like coming in there and they're seeing each other. And the amount of people that have cried when they get in the store, like I'm still trying to understand what it means. You know what I mean? Like the first couple, you know, I was like, wow, that's deep. You know what I mean? But like numerous people are crying, and I'm trying to understand like what that means. And did it say something about like the trauma we've endured? You know what I mean? I'm trying to
Yeah.
understand like what is the
Yes.
go ahead, LaRon.
Yes.
Yeah, for years they've always promised to have all these things and all these initiatives since I was growing up, and so to see something like that actually actualized, it's real. You walk through, it's tangible. You can touch and see it. You know, because I've heard about it coming. I saw when I would go home, I seen they were breaking land. You know what I mean? Buildings I've seen get started and not finished. So when I to come home, I'm like, oh, this joint open? Like, oh, okay, wow. You know, so people don't get the opportunity. So like moving from Dayton to this part of the town, Dayton and Baltimore to me are very similar in some respects too. But when you come up here, it's different. It's that you're gonna have a community mindset shift. I mean, like we're back at home, if somebody messes up your food, you eat it because you just happen to be out. Whereas I come up here, they mess up your food. Black folks not going for it. They want to send it back, go back. So it's a whole mindset shift about what you feel that you're valued to receive. And so that's the first start of the work you guys are doing.
I said,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
thanks.
I just want to chime in because you know, Selassie, you mentioned a couple key thinking points. You kept mentioning process.
Mm,
That this all is a part of a process,
right.
and so I want to just echo in and just cement thinking around that it is a process, and it was a not just a grocery store that you're trying to create, but
That's it.
a movement that enlarged much more than just the store itself. It was bringing the people along this journey, giving them the content that they needed to help to contribute to this whole process.
I
And
say.
so, one of the things I echo out in this academy is that all of us have a responsibility to go back and teach what we know to others who may not be in the space. And so, when you're building a collective community, it's important to share that knowledge because one of the learned lessons that I hope that we learned out of the early 60s movement that we can't invest all of our leadership in one or two individuals.
Say that.
Yeah, yeah. That we all are leaders and we have to develop leadership within everyone.
Mm,
Um, so as you're building your cooperative businesses, keep that in mind. Uh, don't take ownership of it in that sense. Share it because when you share it, believe me, the work will expand. And so that's how we should be looking at expanding this ecosystem. And so thank you for sharing that. He mentioned the Renaissance grocery store and he just touched on the name, but it was a grocery store that was developed in North Carolina that wound up, I don't want to say it was a failure. It just was in a point in time where it sort of disbanded. But what it was, a learning lesson for all of us, particularly along this whole route in terms of when we're developing, particularly food co-ops. And so I went back and heard a couple sessions around Ed and those, what were the learned lessons? And
mm-hmm.
so when you said you built it on the legacy of the other work, yes, there was very real learned lessons. And one of the lessons that that I got out of the Renaissance was that you have to keep community engaged. So
Yes.
so when David was talking about organizing, it's it's organizing now, it's organizing later, and it's organizing forever. So last night I got a chance to look at the film um, looking at Fred Hampton
Oh,
and organizing Fred did early
the
on.
the Messiah, was it? Yeah.
Yeah, Fred Hampton, the Black Panther, young Black Panther leader who was organizing in Chicago. And the work that the Panthers did early on was really about organizing and mobilizing communities. Um, they did wonderful work in terms of getting community connected to the work that they were doing. And so this work that we're doing is really about bringing along the community. And so I'm quite sure and really glad to hear that, to which when people interact in Gym City, they feel like it's coming home. It's not foreign to them because they had so much to put into it and depth. And so when we look at the big structural issues around how are we spending our Black dollars in our community, I would think now, Selassie, we talk about data. Now you're able to capture some data now in terms of the spending power that's going on in that grocery store now, and you're going to track that over time and use it as a platform to move into other areas, because now
Yeah.
those dollars are not being extracted out of the community, they're being reinvested in the community. If you want to
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
talk about
Like that is the hope, and we're working on how to track that now. Even we had figured that our EBT would be about 30%, and like I'm not sure the exact numbers, but like, man, our EBT is, I mean, it's over 50. You know what I mean? Like a lot of EBT sales, which is good. You know what I mean? Because we want to make sure, our whole mission was to increase access. You know what I mean? To so you not take the 2 buses to go downtown and take the bus up to Siebenthaler Kroger's, which we sometimes consider it West Dayton, but that's actually Harrison Township. It is not Dayton. You know what I mean? Something you said about process that I'm gonna get to Tiffany's question is, and it kind of goes to what David was saying earlier, is one of our, so we are highly relational, right? We know power comes in relationships. We know structure is formed by relationships, right? Because structure is an idea that you put resources to, you know what I mean? And so like human beings create the structures, you know what I mean? And so we're highly relational. That's why we spend so much time on building trust, right? And so when we was in the community, our adage was depth over speed, you know, I'm sure some of you have done political organizing, and you want to hit $30 an hour, $50 an hour, you know what I mean? That was considered a success. Like that was a failure in our book, you know what I mean? Success was you had one conversation and it lasted an hour, you know what I mean? Like we want these deep relationships, you know what I mean? That one by one, you know what I mean? We're building up our base, you know what I mean? And we're listening to the community, and like when we went to the doors, we wasn't about like, hey, this is the Gym City Market, blah 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 blah. You know what I mean? We wanted to hear, what are you experiencing in the community? You know what I mean? Beyond even the market, right? Because like it's a movement, right? So like we're looking at like what is this thing that we need to solve? How we need to activate our community towards meeting our needs, et cetera, et cetera. And a market was seen as a part of it. You know what I mean? And some that Ron touched on that I love Ella Baker. You know what I mean? I try to model my organizing after her in multiple levels, because she is, I feel, the queen when it comes to the civil rights movement that most people don't know of, right? But she said, strong people don't need strong leaders. You know what I mean? So like how are we building up our leadership capacity? You know what I mean? It's like the key to movement is having more leaders. You know what I mean? Being a leaderful community. You know, like we have an African liberation celebration a little bit later on today, you know, and we have what, like 9, 10 organizations come together to do it. You know what I mean? They got multiple leaders in it, and we're building these different types of frameworks, exploiting all areas of agreement. You know what I mean? Like how do we truly build power in the community? Because our community we suffer oftentimes from lack of organization. You know what I mean? It's like we're just being out organized, you know, plain and simple. You know what I mean? And so like what are we doing to heal the wounds, you know, to really build power with and not power over, you know what I mean? Walking with the community, you know what I mean, towards making it happen. So Tiffany wanted to know about the community land trust. So there's another part, like we're a little complex, you know, in some kind of way. Okay, so in Ohio, you can't have a nonprofit co-op grocery store, right? So the grocery store had to be a for-profit, right? So as we started realizing the dynamics of Ohio, we had to first create our nonprofit to be able to then birth our for-profit. So we birthed, we called it at the time the Greater Dayton Union Co-op Initiative, GDUCI, but we changed our name to Co-op Dayton, right? So Co-op Dayton became our co-op incubator, right? And our flagship project is the Gem City market. And I say that because the Community Land Trust is our, well, we got 2 more, well, we probably got 3 more bigger projects coming. One is the Community Land Trust, right? So there's land next to the market. I can show some pictures if people want to see this stuff. There's land next to the market that we put inside of the Community Land Trust. So now the community owns it. There's a house next to it that we're working on getting, that we're going to put that inside the Community Land Trust as well. And then we're going to have another conversation with the community. What do we want to do next, right? Like, how do we want to utilize the space? What do we want to build? You know what I mean? That the community is determining how development is happening inside of the region. But we also have a makerspace that is emerging. We have a doula co-op. We have another little grocery store off of LaRon will know this, off of Germantown, over by where the dry cleaners is, and used to be Zion Lion, a little shop there a long time ago, like off of Germantown. She's building like a little like corner store type of health place, and so we're helping her develop that. We got a mushroom co-op that's really picking up steam, you know what I mean? So we're trying to build a co-op ecosystem and a solidarity economy. You know, we're centering it at the market, and the thing that we're not as good at as I want to be, but we're working on it, is that like Marcus Garvey was big on owning the whole supply chain, right? So from the seed to the ground, all up, having that all, you know, building that solidarity kind. So we're flipping the dollar, kind of like Oklahoma and Tulsa, you know what I mean? So right now I'm trying to understand what are the key things that the market has to have, and then how are we building co-ops to meet those needs that we're flipping the dollar amongst, you know what I mean? So we got this entity that's going to be spending this stuff anyways, right? But how are we influencing how we're using that capacity of the market to build other businesses that we can flip the dollar and build a strong solidarity economy, you know? And we're not as good at it as I want to be, you know what I mean? So that's something that's part of our growth edge right now.
Well, but that's an interesting thought, because you say you're building an economy and not just a business. And so you're looking at circulating those dollars back in through the ecosystem from business to business to business that are in some way interconnected. And so
Right.
that really addresses one of the things that we struggle with in our community, is the turnaround of the black dollar and how the dollar has been turned around. So we know that in Asian communities, the dollar turns around 30 days. It circulates 30 days before it leaves their community.
Damn.
In the Jewish community, it's 20 days.
Mm.
In the white community, 17 days. In the black community, we're talking 6 hours.
I didn't think it was that much. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
yeah, 6 hours, before he goes out. And
wow.
a lot of it has to do with what you're saying, because we don't have businesses in our community that we own and operate.
Yeah.
And so there may be other minorities in our communities, but they're not the minorities that are supporting our community. And so it's important to understand the dynamics of that, because they sort of sometimes buy into the Eurocentric model of business ownership.
Right. Right. Yeah. And that's
Looking
why I
at
think,
collective owners, collective participation, they're looking at their individual way of extracting resources and then taking the resources out of the community to their community. So,
right.
so creating that ecosystem that you're talking about really allows that dollar to circulate and grow in the community, and ultimately grow other businesses and opportunities in the community.
I say.
Go ahead. So I see.
Yeah, it's interesting because we joke, but it's probably not a joke, that like our biggest power, our superpower is collaboration. You
Mhm.
know, so like even like the reason why we have a health clinic is because Good Sam closed. Like the hospital down the street. You know what I mean? And so out of that, birth having a health clinic inside the space. You know what I mean? And our teaching kitchen came from a collaboration with Kettering Hospital, and like we're highly collaboratory, right? And and that's why I say it's a shift in the mind state. Like if we start seeing ourselves as interdependent, what I mean, because that really is our reality. You know what I mean? Like, and the pandemic has shown it. You know what I mean? You can be isolationist all you want, but this pandemic will show you that, like, we in this boat together, right? And so once we have that shift in mind state, then it's like to me, business success, it doesn't have to be, even if it's not a co-op, if it's an individual business, but it's still about building your ecosystem, right? Like how are you building relationships with other business? How are you increasing your collaboration, right? How are we understanding our shared future, and so, yeah, like how to build it out, like even we have 3 types of local. We have a West Dayton local, we have a regional local, and we have a statewide local, because we want to make sure that we can mark the dollars, you know what I mean? And even, it's a little side note tangent, but like we marked the Gem City market itself. And what I mean by mark is oftentimes the public space has been marked as essentially white space. You know what I mean? They're like there's certain norms and values that we have to conform to inside the space, right? So, we have, like, on the west side, we haven't had like a lot of development in a while, right? So like we have we got a sister from Nigeria, Yatende Rodriguez, and she designed our like, we have Adinka symbols on the market, right? Because we wanted to highlight, African culture, you know what I mean, that like, and what we could build, you know what I mean, to market, you know what I mean, everybody's welcome, you know what I mean, because like we truly believe in the dignity and worth of every human being, like we will die on that hill if need be, you know what I mean. But like in doing that, we also wanted to mark so that we can help with this transmission, right? Because oftentimes what keeps racism intact is our lack of marking how whiteness shows up in these spaces. You know what I mean? It's assumed as being normal. It's just, you know what I mean? So like, it's assumed as being, oh, that's just the way it is. Well, no, actually, that's a white imagination, right? So we don't mark it enough, you know what I mean? So we wanted to mark this, you know what I mean, to develop a new way to reimagine around it. And actually, we are shifting from using the language. So language is the key to transformation, right? Like, as you use different language, then it shifts the way you relate to it. It shifts how people understand it. So we are shifting from saying community to saying village, because what is a village? You know what I mean? And like how do we become a village together? How do we explore that? You know what I mean? Like when you say community, for some people will be like, well, we already know what a community is. You know, we make a lot of assumptions of what we know. You know what I mean? But with village, it's like, okay, let's reimagine what a village could be. You know what I mean? Like how do we implement this thing? You know, we have an African Elders Council. You know what I mean? So like there's layers to this that we're doing, right? To truly, you know, walk with a community. You know what I mean? A community that has been under organized for a long time. But at one point, you know, for real, was like the most organized in the state, man. Like when C.J. McLean, I mean, like he had that thing locked down, the whole state out of Dayton. You know what I mean? But like, you know, that was years ago. And so like how to build our power, you know, back up. You know what I mean? So yeah.
I want to ask this question since you did raise this. How are other groups embracing this Afrocentric perspective that you're sharing with it, that the grocery is I don't want to say it's embedded in, but how is the other communities, other cultures accepting the Afrocentricness of the work that you're doing?
We haven't had pushback so far. I mean, not that I know of. I mean, it might be there. I think people have embraced it. You know what I mean? It's foreign. You know what I mean? Because you know we're unapologetic in the space. You know what I mean? For sure. You know what I mean? And you know, but I challenge it. You know, like for real. You know, anybody that wants to say that we are independent in nature, you know, let's have that talk. You know what I mean? Because there's no amount of evidence that you could ever show that would convince otherwise. You know what I mean? Because science has shown that we're interdependent. You know what I mean? Even from the air we breathe, this, that, and the other. So to me, you know, we're Afrocentric, but part of the Afrocentric is realizing, you know, our fundamental nature as human beings, you know, and who we really are, you know. And so yeah, we haven't had a lot of pushback, not that I can think of, you know what I mean? Because we can like oftentimes, you know, people don't think you can be pro-black and pro-human, but to me, I don't see any distinction, you know what I mean? So I think it's how we decenter whiteness. You know what I mean? This notion that one group of people, and I say whiteness as a big W, not meaning human beings that are white, but being this notion that like white is superior and that everybody's supposed to live up to that standard and operate under you know certain norms and values that has been labeled as, you know, white or whatever. You know what I mean? Like that has to be challenged from the clothes we wear to how we see each other, to how leadership is developed, right? Like all these things, you know what I mean? So I think yeah, I think the time has come, you know what I mean? And indigenous knowledge, right? Because like what has been indigenous has been seen as heathen and barbaric and all these things, you know what I mean? But now science has proven, you know what I mean? Like the notion of interconnectedness and all these things, right? So I think it's like now it's about praxis, you know, and like don't like someone said earlier. I think I've been in so many talks lately, I can't remember, but like I'm almost probably here, like, you know, about the notion of rhetoric. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, yeah, you talk a good game, and you know, I talk a good game too. You know what I mean? And I don't live as much as I talk. You know what I mean? But like, how do we perfect our praxis, right? You know, thought, action, reflection, right? The key right now is like how we birth in the physical world. You know what I mean? Like how are we transforming our lived environments, right? Like how are we making tangible these things that people can choose? You know what I mean? I'm gonna go this way, I'm gonna go that way. You know what I mean? But like you know, if we just in a talking game, man, nobody will know. You know what I mean? And so like I'd rather birth a millimeter than talk a mile. You know what I mean? And so it's like how are we really like bringing these ideas to reality? You know what I mean? Like, you know, I've heard it referred to, instead of bringing heaven to earth, you know, how you bring earth to heaven. You know what I mean? Like what are we doing in the material world to transform the environment around us? You know what I mean? and increasing belonging. So to me, all of this is about like, how do we create spaces of belonging, you know, and where people can come in their authentic selves, right, and receive the same love, you know what I mean, and yeah, so to me, belonging is the key to all of this, because that's the fundamental of community. You know, like King talked about, agape love is community. You know what I mean? And so it's like, how are we centering our work around love and all of its manifestation instead of fear, right? Because independence brings fear. You know, it's competition, survival of the fittest, all of these things. You know what I mean? But how we operate in abundance. You know what I mean? And it's a huge shift. You know what I mean? It sounds heady. You know what I mean? But like, I think we got to realize that structure in society is built upon thought, you know? And so it's like how are we like challenging some of the underlying assumptions that we build reality off of, and be like, that actually isn't real, right? And how do we root ourselves in what already is? Because like, Ubuntu sounds great, but Ubuntu isn't a philosophy. It really is like the way things flow. You know what I mean? And so it's like the more we go into it, the more expansive we are actually. You know what I mean? Because we're tapping into what already is. You know, because independence is a social construct. It's not interdependence, a social construct. You know.
Do you see? I mean, because in all these different spaces, you know, these disconnected spaces, or not even disconnected spaces, but like different pockets and community around the country that are, you know, incorporating these, you know, principles, Ubuntu, Kwanzaa principles, you know, cooperative, you know, la. Do you see? I think you've mentioned it in the past, Ryan. Do you see like a national, um, you know, a national conversation to kind of shape that? I think you said it. You said it earlier. I don't remember the exact phrase, but you know, starting to. Dang, I'm trying to find what you what you said, because I think you said it nicely, but kind of having this. I guess that's what you said. Is there a national framework with areas of agreement around these principles,
Mm.
and even one as an organization that connects like minds to kind of create this solidarity economy across cities? Because I mean, I see a lot of commonality with the work you're doing in Ohio. I see it in droves in Baltimore, Oakland. You know, we're doing some of it here in Indianapolis. Like, where's that national framework or those national conversations starting to take place? Because it still feels very just, you know, separated, if that makes sense. But the more and more I go into these spaces, I hear just more and more commonality.
Yeah. I would say it's happening, you know, and like a lot of people are looking forward to the conference that Ron's helping spearhead
That's a
as
good point.
like
Good point, yeah.
that way of how to bring everybody together to kind of build a shared platform, you know. But yeah, I think in the last couple of years, a lot of work, and I'm newer to the space, you know what I mean, but like a lot of work is coming together towards, you know, because a lot of people are in the same circles, and so it's kind of like this thing that is emerging. Even, you know, moving for Black Lives, like different things are like, it's all kind of coming together right now. But I think the work that Ron is doing is critical as far as like how to pull some of all this together. And even like there's this thing called the Collective Courage Fund that is emerging to support our work in co-op Black co-op development and infrastructure. So it's happening right now. I mean, like we're literally creating future right now. You know,
Yeah,
Afro future. You know what I mean? I know
that's
Ron probably got something to say too.
yeah, yeah. I certainly agree with the thinking behind that. I exposed espouse this thinking that we have to build local. We have to start to build local um, organizing efforts, local efforts that allow us to collaborate, that connect us, before we talk about building national movements. And so when we collect ourselves locally, we can aspire up to national. So as opposed to national down to local, local up to national. And so this conference that we're going to be hosting, and we're collaborating with other groups in terms of formatting in September, is going to be looking at how we can start supporting local work. Not so much nationally, we want to connect it nationally, but we really want to support local work. This is what this academy really has been about, trying to inspire local work around developing cooperatives in local communities. So as you're doing this work now, I would challenge all of us to look in our local communities and how we're bringing others into our circle of influence. How are we sharing leadership locally in our community? How are we collaborating locally within our own community? And a part of this work really has to be dismantling our own thinking about individuality and start looking more collectively of how we're doing the work that we do, and we connect others to this work. And so I hope to have a lot of the different conversations that will be going on in September at this conference around Afrocentric futurism as it relates to cooperatives, how we build more solidarity economies that are Afrocentric around our values and our principles about who we are, bringing others from all sectors in to talk about what are our learned lessons so that we can come together on a consistent, regular basis and aid each other in growing. I mean, I was just looking at Miss Page's and Marilyn's union about the village and wanting to connect. They're in Park Heights. And so I hope that's something that they work on doing, bringing that collectivity to work in that community. And over time, this is the kind of movement that we continue to try to build in Baltimore and other cities. So I mean, I'm excited about all the opportunities out there, because I think there are opportunities that are presenting themselves differently every day, and it's our our owners of the spaces to be open and receptive
Right,
to
right.
all these new ideas and new ways of doing things. And I know Kepler Institute has been doing some work, a lot of work up there in Indianapolis. And sometimes they even challenge us to reimagine how we're doing our work, because sometimes we may be going down thinking that we have the right recipe and maybe missing a critical ingredient.
Hmm.
So it comes back to us being able to come back to our space and really do some self-examination around how we're doing things, and just not have one all meet all, because everything's a progression. The way I thought yesterday is not the way I'm thinking today,
Hmm.
because I've got new experiences to call upon. And so I'm hoping that this transformational work that we're talking about doing is a part of our own organic growth as we continue to move forward.
Yeah, like I think that when we're talking about developing the counter narrative, and when I talk about challenging underlying assumptions, like oftentimes we look at the big as being powerful, but actually it's the small, right? Because I don't know. If I split this, tea bottle in half, ain't nobody about to jump, you know what I mean? But so I split an atom, you know what I mean? Y'all better recognize, cause you know what I mean? You're like, the power is in the small, right? And so it's talking about like how we build fractal up from the ground. You know what I mean? It's like our ground game has to be strong. And as we connect on, regional and national levels, it's about consolidating the gains at the ground level. You know what I mean? It's like, I've seen too many people that, they try to bust up and like they want to have this national presence, but it's like, yo, they ain't got no ground game. You know what I mean? It's like, so you up there kind of just floating. You know what I mean? Wherever you land is where you land. You know what I mean? But having that ground game is critical. You know what I mean? To be able to really occupy space. You know what I mean? And determining reality on the earth. You know what I mean? On a certain level, right? So So, but fractals up, right? Because like that's the whole thing about emergence. It's understanding that like how patterns duplicate itself, right? So like the power, like when they think locally and act globally, right? Like the power of like what we can do in Dayton can impact the whole globe, you know what I mean, depending upon how strong we make it, you know what I mean, and like how much we show we realize our humanity, because humanity is light, right? So it's like the more we realize that and then allow that to fractal out, you know what I mean. But we've been taught to think big and to always to expand, and how many numbers do you got and this, that, and other. But look, I promise you, I've been organizing for a long time. I'll take 10 down for real soldiers over 100 any day. You know what I mean? Like give me some 10 that are about it. Look,
Yeah.
I'll take any pill. You know what I mean? For
Yeah, no,
real.
and I definitely agree with everything said. And I guess just to continue the question, there is, I mean, to Tiffany's point, logistically there are learnings and lessons that speed up kind of another organization's learnings and lessons that, and I know in these spaces that we go in and talk, there's a shared narrative, and we just kind of learn. And I've learned large amounts from even being in this space. But like my technology mind, I guess, is saying like there's got to be some type of central portal, or like you said, Ron's event, where we have, I mean, because even in our space, we're working on community land trust. So, you know, be interested in seeing like what the different topics are. I mean, because we try to tackle a lot from from climate justice to food deserts to cooperative construction companies and job employees, and so like in terms of where that shared knowledge sits, so that it doesn't stay in a vacuum, so that we can kind of share those narratives and learn from that. I mean, I know it's going to be in more of these talking spaces, but that's just something that I'm interested in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it's real, and that's why I think there's a quickening. You know what I mean? If I like once we had a foundation, how to build up,
Yeah,
because
no,
like
that's a good point. Yeah.
we've never had access to technology. Like can you
And
imagine Marcus
information.
Garvey,
Yeah.
who had 1 million people across the globe? Can you imagine? And he did that without any kind of
He had a
Twitter
he had
or
a
Facebook.
million followers before Instagram.
Man, you know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? It's like, so like how do we use it to magnify? But some people, you know what I mean, like again, you know what I mean, I'm not trying to knock nobody, right? But like they focus so hard on building like their internet presence or whatever, but like they ain't got nothing. You know what I mean? It's like there's nothing to really hold the thing. You know what I mean? So like we're like illusions are connecting to illusions, and it has this a semblance of power, but it's really not there. They ain't got no ground game. They this, that, and the other, But like, so how do we magnify and utilize technology? I mean, right now we couldn't have done this, you know what I mean, without technology, right? But how to have it centered in real life, real communities, and how to connect real communities together. So like, you in Indianapolis or you in Indiana, so I'm about to hit you up, you know what I mean? Like we'll bring
Right.
you bring a crew down to us. We got Detroit, you know what I mean? We got Cleveland, you know what I mean? Like how are we organized? Kentucky, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like how are we
definitely.
organizing regionally?
No,
Yeah.
and I definitely agree with that. I already followed y'all. I'm gonna reach out and
Cool. Get
some of the other ones as well. As particularly around the food co-op, because
Yeah.
similar programs at different stages. And one I guess one connective thing that I hear too, as things are sped up and we are sharing information, is kind of that still that one kind of big behemoth of an issue. And this is what I struggle with, is just kind of the idea and the concept of economic solidarity, and 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 maybe even that being kind of like a central point that we start to share. But even with that, as it kind of in our Kepler spaces, looking at economic solidarity, but how do you build out your own, how does community build out their own power around that, knowing that historically economics, monies, dollars, economy has been structured and set up not to work for a certain type of people. So how do you look at, building new economies in new ways and new paradigms is just something that's really, and like you said, you're kind of self-actualizing it and discovering it as you walk the road. And so that's just something that really, for lack of a better word, like just like kind of irks me from a patient standpoint. And how do you get there and look at that? Of course, you have examples of like, digital coin and yada yada yada, but it still is kind of on this capitalist kind of mindset versus more of a like a group economy type of thing or ownership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, it's gonna take a while to shift because it's some deep underlying assumptions,
Yeah,
you know,
paradigms. Yeah,
around it. But to me, like that shows where the power is at. You know what I mean? And like how we go deep, and it's complex. You know what I mean? It's messy sometimes. You know what I mean? But like how to stay in the messiness, right? But that's why I'm saying the importance of having. Okay, so like I learned a lot from this brother in Cincinnati named Peter Black, right? And he emphasizes that like oftentimes, okay, I'm like 99% positive most people in this room have experienced this before. Okay, so someone in the community has this idea, we're like, great, let's go for it, right? And the very first meeting, people that don't even know each other, they're breaking up and say, okay, I'll be president, you be vice president. You know what I mean? Like we're building our structure, first meeting. You know what I mean? What normally happens within that first year? It crumbles. You know what I mean? And then someone might be like, oh, you know what? Let's revive that. You know what I mean? So someone, a couple months later, will try to bring everybody back together. But we go in those cycles of like, coming together and not coming together, coming together and not coming together. Like we play that dance. You know what I mean? And the reason is because we're not building the depth of the relationship. Like being relational first. You know what I mean? And co-creating a vision together. So like we should feel it, taste it, smell it. You know what I mean? Like, because ultimately our success is going to be that like our vision, we are so connected to the vision that any obstacle comes our way, like our vision is stronger that we can bust through it. You know what I mean? But like if we haven't done that work, we haven't built that strong level of connectivity, then the obstacles come and it dissipates us, it busts us up. You know what I mean? And so it's like so how we do this work is that's why I'm back to that process. You know what I mean? Like the underlying assumptions and how we do this work is so important to combat some of the things that you just mentioned. You know what I mean? It's a different way of moving together as a community, but what we tried hasn't worked. You know what I mean? So yeah. So like
and
to
I
me,
think
I think
that's the deeper concern too. And we kind of have to cross it because there's examples where it has worked, and we've seen just like Farmer Chippy's not here because usually I bring this up and it just goes off on another tangent. But like, how do you build that? Like Tulsa, Oklahoma, like you just get bombed. I mean, it's just structural. It's just structural violence that comes against even the success stories. Not to deter anybody. I mean, we're committed to it. Good, bad, death, live, or whatever. But I mean, you kind of have to plan for that. You know what I mean? I mean, that's just been the history of people. You know what I mean? You kind of have to have that in place.
Nah, there definitely is a military. I think offense is the best defense, but there needs to be a defense for sure. And how we even how we're collecting data. Because when you're really challenging power, you know what I mean, and how power is distributed, because power is the ability to change our lived environment. You know what I mean, and so as we're challenging the dominant narrative of how power should flow and who should have power, you know, centering at the margins instead of like people making decisions that have no idea what's happening, you know, like all that things, you know, it's gonna ruffle feathers. You know what I mean? Like I think that is like, you know, and so being like not acknowledging that would be like a fatal naivety, I think. You know what I mean? Like on some level, you know, and so but what I've been surprised in Dayton, and I can testify, is that like we're building bridges across differences, you know, in a way that like I mean, even our local and our county government is walking with us on this journey as far as like racism as a public health issue. You know, I mean, like we're really doing real work in our region to like transform like how we are, you know. So but yeah, I think it can and it will probably be challenged. And evidence of that is there ain't no way in hell, excuse my language, that Nicole Hannah-Jones should not gotten tenureship. I mean, like that there's astronomically no way you could justify that 1619 is a seminal piece that will go down as hit in history, you know, and she doesn't get tenure. You crazy? You know what I mean? But like that's his whole 1776 versus 1619 phenomenon that like is really like the battleground right now, you know, or a major battleground, because you know 1776 basically, you know, says that race wasn't a big issue, you know what I mean, and 1619 shows the lived experience of Black people, you know what I mean. And I'm not gonna say that the first Black people came in 1619, but it documents it from there with the you know emergence of enslavement, you know what I mean. But so yeah, it really is a cultural war right now, you know what I mean. And a war for like who defines reality, right? And so like the shift to interdependence shifts like who are the knowledge creators, you know what I mean. And like is knowledge in the community valid, you know, like I would rather have the 60-year-old grandmother who lived on the street 40 years. I'd rather have her knowledge any day than some kind of PhD who read a lot, don't know nothing about nothing. You know what I mean? And so like how we reframe and situate knowledge is so important in this hour.
Yeah. So where are you going, folks? That's a question that we all need to be asking ourselves as we continue to cultivate this space and then bring others in the spaces. Where are we going? And having a plan to get there.
That's the messy part, right? I mean, you said it
May I
earlier.
ask a quick?
You shape the road as you walk it.
I just wanted to ask a quick
Oh,
question.
go ahead, please.
Thank you again. Wonderful information, Mr. Selassie. Thank you so much. I just I wanted to know, and I guess this kind of lends itself to Damon's point, because I think sometimes the disconnect for me comes where we have to find a way to kind of navigate through the like you said, the capitalist ways, the government funding and all of that to do the community work. What was your process like to kind of intertwine the government bureaucracy, some of the red tape that you have to go to get some of the funding? Like, talk about that process and how you kind of navigated through that to get the funding needed outside of what you did with the community, right? Because you
Sure.
talked about some other funding sources as well. So outside of that, how did you work through that process? Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. You know, you just remind me like if you get a chance, go on our Facebook and look at our opening ceremony. You know what I mean? Because in it, you know, we started with a land acknowledgement to you know our native like we have 5 rivers here, which was like a huge place for the Native American community. You know. And I bring that up because at one point, you know, we have the governor, we have senators, all gave like this little like video congratulatory thing, you know, and even a Republican senator talking about co-ops, right? Which was like a lot of people like found that like highly like how the you know interesting, but I think our strategy was to frame everything around health equity, you know, and we made a health case, right? That like we like there's data that shows the impact of the current system and the disparate health issues and how Black bodies in particular are overrepresented in you know negative health outcomes. You know what I mean? And you know that we know that zip codes determine life expectancy, right? So we used the knowledge of what we had to build our health case. You know, like we even did a what you call it? Oh my gosh, slipped my brain. It was a type of loan that we did. Dang, I'll come to it in a second. It's extremely complex. You know, when you talk about red tape, uh,
Is it the
uh,
7A? Did you do a 7A?
what's that? What's another name for that? Like what they call 7A?
Oh. Mm. I don't know.
Charitable
I
loan
just know it's
fund.
like,
Uh,
let me see.
Charitable loan fund.
no, it's something through the government. Where you tie it's through a government and a bank. Like so, a bank has these things, and so we uh we had a partner with a bank, and the bank like so like what is it called?
Economic
Like
development was the Economic Development Initiative, the EDI program.
no, it might be connected to it, but it's not that. It's a type of it just slipped my brain out, so I'll think of it in a second. But um through the whole process, you know, we got help from you know, local government, county government, um, and we basically just I think it's about how you position the case. At the time, we were second in the nation when it comes to food insecurity. And so, you know, we lived, we utilized the data on a local level to build the case of like why this is necessary. And one thing that I commend our region is that like when, you know, when things are brought up, we show up. You know what I mean? Like you know, we had the mass shooting a couple years ago. You know what I mean? And we showed up. We had the KKK trying to do a rally. You know what I mean? We showed up. You know, and so it's like you know, like we pulled together. What is that thing called, man?
Hmm.
It's a route that a lot of people are trying to do right now to build co-ops. And I cannot think of it. I don't know why it slipped in my mind. But it's super complex. It's real hard to do. Like you gotta get special lawyers. That's all they know how to do is that work. You know, it's very, 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 very hard, and it's kind of expensive. You get a lot of money out of it, but it was expensive to do. Um, it slipped my mind. It's so crazy. It's on the tip of my tongue too, but I'll think of it.
Okay. Hmm. But I would probably just want to add this comment because you said that you built you addressed your need around health equity, um, and so which is a policy issue. So when you talk about government, you got to talk about policy.
Right.
You got to be able to connect to policy because policy is what drives the funding. And so if you're going to do any work that's of and look at it as as expanding and broadening, it has to be embedded with some policy change, some work around changing policies and bringing
Yes.
new policies to the conversation. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of times when we're doing our initial work, we don't think in terms of policy, how we are trying to impact new policies. And so we know that based on all the research that's been going on over the last years, we know that in many communities of color, we've been impacted by food insecurity. And it's had a negative impact on health outcomes. So when you talk about shortened lifespans, you talk about shortened abilities to create wealth. So I die at 62. Somebody else needs to be 82 That's
Yeah.
20 more years of income and wages that they're able to get that I'm unable to get. And so that was one of the discussions we had yesterday around, looking at communities in Baltimore. And for those who look at this going on in your community as well, is that if you live in Jewel Heights, in Baltimore, which is a predominantly African American community, almost. Can you mute your mic, please? Whoever that is, on the caller two. If you live in Jewel Heights and your lifespan is a little beyond 60, but if you go into Roland Park, your lifespan is almost 80, and it's only less than 10 miles between both communities. So what's happening in Jewel Heights that you live less of than Roland Park? Well, of course, access to food, the environmental justice issues that impact our lives, because it was a community that environmentally has had all the disparities and indices that going on that doesn't support long living. And so and that's a big discussion now we're beginning to have too, in terms of environmental justice and how it's impacting how it has impacted our community and still continue to. Because again, we're living here in the district, same issue, Selassie, that you mentioned. They're looking at putting all the garbage disposal in one community of the city that's probably highly populated by African Americans. I mean, that's again, another policy decision. But let's we get together and as you said, mobilize and organize around that policy shift. This the people in position will designate that area for that particular activity, and we know what the long-term benefits are going to be. So I just interject this conversation because we try to work around trying to shift some policies, and I think that's where a lot of the work that now that we're realizing, particularly coming out of this whole COVID, is that we got to change policy.
True.
As it relates to our communities.
True.
And
Yeah.
Go after this funding these larger pieces of resources that can help us change some of the dynamics.
Yeah, no, that's real. I mean, cause COVID has shown like who, I mean, for a long time we said that, when the white community gets a cold, the Black community gets the flu or whatever. You know what I mean? But like we've shown in COVID, you know what I mean, that because of the underlying health inequality, that like we were impacted more. You know what I mean, by COVID, right? Because of the structural the way that our lived environment has shaped our health, right? So like to me, like hearing you talk, like policy is really about narrative. You know what I mean? The narrative, it drives what kind of policy decisions are being made. You know what I mean? Like that's why I keep coming back to where the underlying assumptions and what is the counter narrative that we're living, because that then determines what kind of policies we create. And that's how ideology connects with resources, because policy is the vehicle of how resources are distributed, right? It informs how resources are distributed, that then in turn, makes real an idea that could not be real, right? So like you look, like race doesn't exist, but you can't tell me racism doesn't happen. That's the paradox of race, you know what I mean? Because it's like something that is not genetically a reality has physically become a reality because of how resources are shaped and influenced by the assumption of race. You know what I mean? So yeah, so I think I'm glad you brought that up, Ron, because like it's really a holistic shift. You know what I mean? and it comes in phases and pieces, but that's also a way to get more people involved, right? Because some people may just want to focus on the policy work. Some people may focus on just the organizing work. Some people may want to focus on, you know, access or whatever, you know. And so it's like, how do we create that space of belonging where everybody can use their gifts and talents, right? And not try to fight each other. Like I ain't trying to fight down Tiffany, you know what I mean? I want her gifts to shine, you know what I mean? I know her shine is going to impact me. You know what I mean? And so it's like it's this notion of like how we get how we looking for collective wins, you know what I mean? And really moving the needle in our community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For those from the Baltimore area who are familiar with Lawrence Brown, who was one of the professors at Morgan State University, who started his writing around the black butterfly. He has now launched his new book, The Black Butterfly. So if you and I'll put that in the chat if you want to really look at some of the power dynamics in terms of how they've infected or affected Black communities. Lawrence lays out a real game plan in his book, The Black Butterfly. So I'll put that in the chat as well. Some of you may be familiar with Lawrence's work.
No, I like to learn more.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to Selassie, I tend to always be mindful of our presenters and their time and their commitment, and particularly this being a Saturday. And so I'm not rushing you off, but if you have somewhere to go and you need to sign off, and certainly we're going to be knowing that we'll be connecting at some other point in time, you to this group and this group to you. You're free to go ahead and do that. If you want to continue to share with us, certainly you're welcome to do that as well. I really appreciate and you know this, I honor your time and thank you for always saying yes, my brother. And that's a real commitment to the work. You show up, and so you mentioned Marcus Garvey and and Ella Baker, and couldn't say more about those two individuals and all the individuals who come before us who've done this work, and the commitment they brought to the space. So yeah, the commitment they brought to the space, and even our new icons that are bringing more to the space. We got so we have a lot of good stuff happening in the space of cooperative work. I'm excited about it. I really am. I'm excited about where we at and what opportunities are before us. And I'm hoping that we can continue to build this and share this and bring others into the space to realizing where we at and the power that we have as a community. And as you said, rewriting that next narrative about where we at and where we going.
Yeah, no, like I'm super thankful to be here. I appreciate all your work. You know what I mean? I think I always say yes because I know you're at the cutting edge. And one thing I appreciate about you is that like you don't allow people to get like lost in the sauce. You know what I mean? Like you'll call and just check on me once in a while and this, that, and other. And I really appreciate that. Like it's a whole next level of thinking. You know what I mean? From early on in our relationship. You know what I mean? I'm like, man, that I need to be more like that. You know what I mean? So I appreciate the example that you show of like how to build ecosystems and how to continue to grow a network, you know what I mean? And so I'm thankful for meeting everyone today. LaRon, next time you in Dayton, you know what I mean? Hope you're gonna chop it up, you know what I mean? I'm looking to Indiana, you know what I mean? Say we're gonna build. My daughter's in Baltimore, you know what I mean? So I'll probably be up there soon, you know what I mean? Because she's getting out of school,
Well, please do. Please do. I'll meet you there. We'll break some bread together.
That would be great. That would be real great. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'm putting in my information in the chat. I mean, I would love. I'll probably stay a couple more minutes and just hear the flow what everybody's talking about. But yeah, we got African Liberation Day, so I gotta go over there pretty soon. But
all right. Yeah. Well, I do want to share with the folks that we are going to be, for those of you from Baltimore and others in other communities, you can do this too, and we'll help you work on that as well. But we are planning a trip up to Dayton this summer to visit Gem City's food market. So I'll keep you abreast on the plan. We're going to be working with um, the folks over the Black Eel Institute and doing that, Eric and group. So we're looking forward to doing that and taking a group up to Baltimore, up to Dayton, and stay a couple of days in LeVon's hometown to hang out.
You already know I'm coming. Come on now.
Thanks.
Well, I want to introduce y'all to someone who I just recently met, Jeff Suttles. Jeff, you can unmute yourself. Great,
Good
great,
morning.
great.
Well, good afternoon, I should say.
I was introduced to Jeff from Shelly Miller, who's with the group ICA, and so she said to Ron, I think that you and Jeff have some connectivity. So she prompted the invite, and I followed up and contacting Jeff. And Jeff said, Jeff, I didn't get your bio, but I'd like you to just share with people what workspace you're working in and what you want to share today before we close out with the group. So go ahead, Jeff. The mic is yours.
Cool, thanks, man. I want to first say I want to thank you and the Network for Developing Conscious Communities for allowing us to share on your platform. I think it's very important. The brother mentioned a lot of great things this morning, and I'm just happy to be a part of what's going on. I'm in the Bronx, New York, so I'm in the boogie down, and to start off, I started interning as a like a marketing person with Green Worker Co-op, which is a co-op that's located in South Bronx. And I was there for a year or two, maybe a couple of summers, I'll say. Then I also took some courses on cooperative businesses. So for my final project in my co-op class last summer, I believe it was, or the summer before last, COVID was last year. I wrote I'm a musician. I went back to school, and now I work as a social studies teacher, teaching 6th to 7th grade students in the Bronx as well. But I wrote a song for my final project that was based on cooperative businesses, and it was a lot of good feedback. So I decided to take it and put it out on a digital format, in all digital formats. And then we came to the point where it was time to make like a PSA slash video for it. So I just got together with a couple of my friends, music guys, and some film people I know, and put it together. And now we're at the point with our initiative where we're just talking to different organizations. I'm looking to partner up with people for advertising, obviously, and social media marketing or whatever. And also, we want to bring a point where we can maybe start putting some events together, whether they be in New York, whether they be in other places, so we can broaden awareness when it comes to cooperative businesses. The song is kind of like a theme for cooperative businesses, and we're hoping to draw people in and broaden the message, share the message with a wider audience through multimedia arts, in this instance through video and audio music. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm also looking to connect with other businesses as far as building a co-op myself. I haven't done that quite yet. I'm still in the process of putting it together, but I felt that this project was a good way. This co-op initiative was a great way for me to start connecting with more people, for me to have some stronger conversations. The brother was talking earlier about, collective wins and we and all that stuff that is so important to what cooperatives are about. So, this is kind of my first steps going in the area to build in that direction. By far, I'm nowhere at like a grocery store level, but you know what I mean. I'm like, you got to start somewhere, and I'm happy that people like yourself are allowing me to share what I'm doing, and that's pretty much it. I want to show you guys the video and get your feedback on that, and share with you my email address just in case you have any questions or you want to connect on something, and kind of keep it moving from there. I don't want to take up too much time as well. I know
Well,
it's
Jeff,
Saturday.
I think that you've already been made a presenter, so you should be able to share your screen with us.
Okay, let's see here. Okay, so mm, can you guys see the screen?
Down at the bottom. Oh yeah, there it is. It just came up.
Just came up. Okay,
Just
here it is. This is you guys are some of the first people to see it. This is the co-op PSA/video. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks again for watching and giving me time out of your day. The story you're about to see represents what being a part of a co-op means to you and your community. I've always considered myself a humanitarian, and through my work with activist groups, I felt the need to bring a message through the music as a public service announcement for our communities out there that sometimes feel left behind. Let's get together, let's move forward, let's build the true spirit of cooperative businesses. Check it,
You know,
check it once.
is anybody else? I'm not seeing a video. I'm
Yeah,
just
we lost it, Jeff. Yeah, man, we can't see it.
You can't see, can you hear?
yeah,
We
we
can
can
hear.
hear.
We could, and it popped out. We can hear though. Yeah.
Okay, let me see what happened. Try it again. Sorry about that.
yeah. It seems to be a placeholder there. I guess I have to
It's
hit the
like
play
it
button.
froze or something, screen froze or something.
I got my share on,
Yeah,
but it's like
I'm seeing your video, Jeff Collins co-op. I'm seeing it.
are you not seeing it playing?
No, I'm
No,
not
it look
seeing.
like you're looking for airplay somewhere. It look like you're looking to airplay somewhere too. That may be part of it.
Like we can hear it, but we couldn't see it.
Okay. Give me 1 second.
It was jamming on the first couple seconds.
All
It
right.
had.
I was like, what I'm hearing. You know what I mean?
There's definitely more to come. I'm having a problem with the share here though. My share just keeps buffering, so I'm not sure.
What is it? An MP4 that you have?
Yeah, it's an MP4.
Uh, hmm. Well,
Hold up, maybe that's why, because my camera went off. Maybe that's why I wouldn't share. Um, Share screen. I'm gonna. I guess I. Let me see if I can.
oh, okay. Jeff is left now. Okay. Okay. It looks like Jeff has left us for a minute there. Hmm.
Kind of had that Gil Scott Heron vibe.
Okay. Okay. Jeff is back in the room again.
Yeah, I had to maybe leave out right quick to see if that it needed to like reboot. I guess. Give it one more try, man.
Okay. I'm making you the presenter. So now,
Okay.
Jeff, you're the presenter now.
All right.
All right. So you should be able to go to the share your screen at the bottom.
Can you see now?
Yes, we can. I see some legs. I see some. Yeah. Okay. I
All
saw
right.
some.
All right. So that's the video. Now I'm about to play it. Once again, please excuse the technical difficulties. Thanks for your patience. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. The story you're about to see represents what being a part of a co-op means to you and your community. I've always considered myself a humanitarian, and through my work with activist groups, I felt the need to bring a message through the music as a public service announcement for our communities out there that sometimes feel left behind. Let's get together, let's move forward, let's build the true spirit of cooperative businesses. Check a 1, 2, We can rise, we can build, work smart to earn the chill, make a mountain out of hills, break $1 billion down the mills. If it's just we mean that's failure, we've been lied to that success. With goods, financial freedom, when all around you there's the rest. When all around you there's the jets, vets, slipping on some steps. Babies sleeping without eating, parents working shift stress. If you got to hit your second, third, make that the switch. You ain't got no one to lean upon, but you can lean on it. We can do it together, through the stormy weather. Build a team that's strong. You know it's been too long. So what are you gonna do to make the dream come true? It's about that time. Gotta see the community shine. Get yourself a little plan. Yeah, that you can. Your community and your fellow man. This is how you take a stand. Because communities open up, people collaborate. Communities open up, people collaborate. Communities open up, collaborate. Communities open up, people collaborate. Communities open up, people collaborate. Communities open up, people collaborate. Communities open up, collaborate. Communities open up, people. It only takes 2 or 3. So are you working with me? Make the business with a plan. Get continuity and stand for the mom and pop store against the corporation door. Cause if they ain't giving back, then they can't see us This is how we stay. Because communities open up, people collaborate. Communities open up, people collaborate. Communities open up, collaborate. Communities open up, people collaborate. Communities open up, people collaborate. Communities open up, people collaborate. Communities open up, collaborate. Communities open up, people. Cool.
Wow.
So there it is.
All
So that,
right.
yeah, that's what we're kind of using as a segue to try to connect with people like yourselves to kind of start getting the word out and also build cooperatives as we move forward. But I thank you guys for your time.
Well, thank
Tiffany,
you.
thank you very much. I'm going to put my contact information in the chat box
Well,
just in case someone wants to email or have any questions.
Amani, this is entertainment for the conference.
Yeah, man. You know, we're trying to add to it. We got a little ways before the conference comes, so
Yeah.
hopefully we get some other things together with it. You know.
All right.
Right. Yeah, and and I really appreciate, like, I'm a firm believer that art is the driver of movement, right? And so like this is what we need being created, you know what I mean, to help frame and shape the movement going forward. So yeah, I really appreciate it.
Thank you, brother, man. I want to commend you on all the good work you're doing. You said you're in Ohio, right?
Yeah, in Dayton. Yep.
Yeah, so I'm going to try to get with Ron and maybe get out there when they take that trip out there. I've never been to Dayton, so that'd probably be a great thing.
Yeah, that'd be good.
We might have some good food and enjoy that Midwest out there.
Ah, yes indeed, yes indeed.
That's right. Well, folks, we're gonna just close out for this afternoon, thanking Brother Selassie and Brother Suttles in terms of sharing with us this afternoon. You do have Amali's information in your folders in terms of the directory for all our presenters. His information is there if you want to reach out to him. There in Dayton. Jeff just loaded his information. I saw it in the chat. So if you want to go in the chat and grab Jeff's information, and if not, just follow up with me and I'll forward it over to you. We got 3 more sessions to go, folks. We're hitting to closure. So it's been a good journey. Thank God for it. That we've been sharing this space now for 9 weeks, and I feel every bit of those 9 weeks. But we forge forward, folks, and I appreciate you being in the space as well. So, Brother Miley, thank you for all that you do, and I can't say enough for that. Looking forward to ways that we can continue to support the work that's going on there in Dayton, Ohio. Magnificent work. And Jeff, of course, we're looking forward to connecting more with you in terms of your video and possibly participating in our upcoming conference in September.
Yes,
All right.
yes,
All right.
definitely.
All right, folks. We're going to get blessings for the day, thanking our Creator for this moment and this time. And let's say some closing remarks or comments. I'm going to sign off for this afternoon. Let's say some closing. Miss Page, you smiling? There's something you want to say? Okay. All right then. Well, good folks. Again, everyone, thank you. Happy Liberation Day up in Ohio today. Have fun. All righty.